Gevo has just released their earnings, but the stock price has tanked. So in this video, we're gonna look at all the things that you've missed about Gevo earnings and go very deep in the data. Let's do it. So let's start with the comment that the CEO told us about Gevo earnings. So they said, we've made great progress. The pieces are coming together. But have the pieces really come together? Well, in this video, we're gonna break down everything as a Gevo investor, and let's dive into the numbers, the top line, for example. And here we go, finally the numbers. So revenue wise, we finally sold some ethanol, some also hydrocarbon. That was the isobutanol that is being produced. More on that later in the video. But the total revenues were $142,000, not really much. And if you compare to how much we spent, actually, that is the big deal. We spent over $3 million for a total loss of over $3 million. Obviously, the revenues were too small to cover the costs. But how did that happen? Well, let me show you that there are reasons, and they're not as bad as you may think. Right, so the cost of these sales, basically that's the main problem, and the cost is basically due to the fact that there are 2.3 million associated with the maintenance of the Luverne and Southampton facilities, and approximately 1.2 million in depreciation expenses, meaning the plants are now getting older and there is some depreciation going on, and so that is some costs that add up to the cost of goods. But overall, it's not due to the cost of goods being too high. It's only due to the fact that these sites have not been producing for a while and they needed some love. And unfortunately, there are more costs because revenues is the only thing that is positive for a company. And then there are more costs going forward. Let me show you. Right, two types of costs, R&D, and R&D has gone up from 2020. So they've now hired more people. The same thing applies to SG&A, so selling, general, and administrative. And even in this case, they've hired more people because they are expanding. So everything is moving according to plan. There is nothing outside our expectations as long-term investors. But thank God there are even some good news, guys. That's really what we want to hear from Gevo, because obviously there are bad news, but also good ones. Let me show you. So the best bit of news that you want to take away from these earnings is that cash and cash equivalents are now 522 million compared to basically more in 2020, but at least we are not burning through cash too quickly. This level of cash is enough to get us through for a while, which is what you want to hear from a company that is not profitable, that is not producing any cash flow, any meaningful revenues at all. So that is, good news. But there is one bit that you really need to know, and that is probably one of the things that you might be more concerned about as a Gevo investor, and I am a long-term Gevo investor myself. I'm planning to hold for the long run, and if you want to subscribe, I make videos when any news on Gevo comes out, so that you're always up to date. And so let's have a look at this bit of news that is very important, and we are gonna keep monitored on this channel. Gevo incurred in a net loss, as you could imagine, for the 3 months ending in September, and that it was 14 million. And compared to the net loss they had in 2020, that was 6 million. So we are actually doubling the losses, and it's something that is obviously concerning, and we can at the moment cover with the cash, but we need to keep tabs on, and we're gonna make more videos on this channel. So the obvious question is it a good time to buy Gevo, and what are people thinking about this stock? A buy, a sell? Let's have a look at what analysts think about it. And for my analysts and for my price targets, I use tip ranks for free, guys. I don't want you to buy anything. If you want to join my Patreon, it's the one link in the description below, and I'm gonna help you building your portfolio, and you would be able to join my Discord. But now let's have a look at these price targets, and they're actually very bullish. The low price target for Gevo is actually $10, very good. Average 14, which obviously it's an incredible increase. You would double your money if you were to buy today. Then the high is actually tripling your money almost. So that is a lot of upside. And based on the back of that, what are big institutions doing? Are they buying? Are they selling Gevo? Well, let me show you that data. Right, you can find big institutions here on MarketBeat, and it's the best way for me to look for institutional ownership and buying. So if you look at where we are in terms of institutional ownership, we are 15%, which is okay, not great, not incredible. But what I wanted to show you, and this is the bit that is very interesting, is that in 2021, the second quarter, we actually saw a lot of people buying into Gevo, and that was obviously very good for the stock. But in the third quarter, which is obviously the one that just finished, and to be honest, we are inside the fourth quarter, well, there is not much buying going on. This is actually not good at all. Let's have a look at which companies are actually buying and selling, and what we can see, and probably the reason why Gevo has not been performing very well is because BlackRock, and is one of the companies with the highest amount of shares in Gevo, with the biggest ownership, they actually dumped 44 million worth of shares. That is massive compared to what everyone else is doing. Like the other one company who has actually maybe counteract the effect of this sale was GOD Capital Management, and they actually bought only 7 million. But what is the sentiment for Gevo? Normal investors normally have got some kind of wisdom that institutional investors do not have. So let's have a look at what people think about Gevo. Right, so again, back on TipRank, and to be honest, what we have to look at is actually very simple to look at. We just look at over here, and the sentiment is actually very positive for Gevo, which is obviously very encouraging. But is it then a good time to buy or not? Well, let me tell you what I'm doing with my portfolio. I am holding, and I'm not planning to buy any more Gevo going forward, at least for a while, at least until we're gonna see some meaningful revenues being made, especially coming from the first plant that they have installed, that they are developing as we speak. And we are talking about Net Zero 1, which is obviously still under wraps and still being built. So we are actually a year away from it, and to be honest, we have a lot to go through. We know that, as I told you before, that we are gonna see high interest rates, the bond market becoming much more interesting for investors, and that will potentially take away money from the equity market, and so money will flow from the equity market into the bond market. This is my biggest bet, obviously, and I'm sure that this is gonna happen. So in all of this, Gevo might be heavily affected, and so the best thing to do, and what I'm doing, I'm keeping my position in Gevo quite small to make sure that I do not have too much fluctuation in my portfolio. I think Gevo is a very good stock, but also a very risky one, and I prefer to have a steady growth, for example, buying Tesla, Apple, the big tech stocks, because these ones, obviously, they always grow when the market is in a bull run, and you're free to follow what I'm doing. But Gevo is one of the stocks that when they start running, they really just blast off, but that could take a few years from today. And to be honest, I will make more videos on Gevo, so stick around and I'll see you next time.